Hi, everybody. WaitingForNextYear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and today is the return of Scott Raab. He's coming back on the podcast. As some of you, and most of you probably remember, he used to be a weekly Monday morning guest on the podcast. We did that for a number of years. We did it for a long time. It was great. Loved having Scott be a part of the history of the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast, and part of that is that when I reach out to him or he reaches out to me on occasion, he comes back on the show. It's so wonderful. There's plenty to talk about with Scott today. He's got a brand new book, the follow-up to the Whore of Akron, You're Welcome, Cleveland, how I helped LeBron James win a championship and save a city. And then we're also going to talk about the fact that he is one of the initial contributing writers to The Athletic, the new paid for-pay website, subscription website covering Cleveland sports, including Jason Lloyd, TJ Zuppe, and Scott Raab is certainly a big name to launch that site. So we're going to talk to him about that and what all that means. This podcast is brought to you by nobody other than Waiting for Next Year. And how do you support Waiting for Next Year? Patreon. That's our little subscription site, and whatever amount of money you can give, we will try and make it worth your while. We try and make it worth your while just with the content we give you for free, and we don't overload the site with ads. Occasionally, those network ads, they sneak in a pop-up, which really kind of pisses us off too. But we try, we tell them to remove those as soon as possible. We hate that stuff too. So, but we bring you the site largely for free. And so if you can help us, please do so. Patreon.com/WFNY, Patreon.com/WFNY. And now the return of Scott Raab.
Waiting for next year. Waiting for next year.
On the other end of the line is Scott Raab, and we're going to talk about You're Welcome, Cleveland, how I helped LeBron James win a championship and save a city. I got to tell you, I haven't finished the book yet, but I got to tell you, Scott, that just reading the first chapter, and spoiler alert, but it kind of begins where the story ends, and I think, and the Cavs you go over all the winning moments of the Cavs Game 7, and I was welling up reading it. Is it still kind of fresh, or have you kind of hardened to it?
Well, first, thank you. You know, I mean, not just for asking me to do the podcast again. You know, it's like trotting the old horse out of the barn when the children show up on Sunday. It's like, yeah, good Jesus, the asshole's still alive. I can't believe it. But thanks, because trying to recreate. And by the way, and let me just jump right to this, because I realized this at some point, and I think I realized it might have been partly on WFNY. There was also something else, because I love Mike Polk, and there was something, and that might have been like a fan post, something on your site. I'm going to say like Believeland in reference to the 30 for 30, that I was all too visibly a part of, and the book, stuff like that. The people got to understand these aren't produced for Cleveland fans. You know what I mean? They're not. When ESPN Films, does one of those 30 for 30s, they're not going, what are Cleveland fans going to think of this? And I think anyone, who really felt either I don't want to see that thing, or I'm disgusted they did a terrible job, and I don't need to be dragged through all those. I totally get that. I totally get a lot of things, I think, for what things look like from a Cleveland fan's point of view. But in terms of product, if you're writing a book, HarperCollins going to publish a book months later about, there's no spoiler alerts, no one's going, oh yeah, I should read that book. I wonder how that series ended. And kind of like with Believeland, I take some of the pushback, or some of the, let's call it disrespect. I take it, not personally, but too seriously, because I don't think Cleveland fans, especially, people in your audience, are dumb or inferior, or that their insights are less valid than mine. but some of the emotional reactions to that 30 for 30, and not the Whore of Akron, because, at that point, it was easy to think of me as someone who was speaking the rage of many, many Cleveland fans. But probably with this book, I'm trying to reach everyone. And likewise, and it may seem obvious, and I'm saying it, I'm being condescending and I don't mean it that way. I mean, there are people genuinely really prickly and really dismissive and really eager to say, I'm never going to watch that because it's ESPN, or I'm never going to, that's a legit opinion. But at least in my case, I want to make it clear that if you, a diehard, felt even one goosebump reading my description of a play that we're all going to take to our graves, 120 happy years from now, I appreciate that very much. But I'm also really, I'm a little embarrassed almost, and probably should be. Like 2 LeBron books, two LeBron books.
They're just,
you're sick. You're sick. You're a sick man, and greedy, and all that stuff. So, thanks. That's I had to open with the game. I did, because I couldn't. I wanted to. I think I got right to it after like the beginning of chapter 2, where I go, when he left, I wrote this book and called it The Whore of Akron, and at least explain. I don't assume anyone's read the first book, but I also can't drop it on a reader in chapter 5 or 6. Oh yeah, by the way, I called them out in this book title and this and that. So I had to do. I felt I had to open with 2 things, and the most important one, the only one at all that actually matters, is that LeBron basically ran the length of the court, 89 feet. I think they've done that sports science thing, and committed an act of basketball beauty that the greatest thing I've ever seen. So you really have to kind of open with that. You're not going to build up to that for an audience of readers, but as far as the whole Cleveland thing goes, I've been plowing that patch of land for a long time, and it certainly has given me more than I've given back. I guess I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm not trying to be the Mr. Aw Shucks Andy Griffith asshole either. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, I didn't have a game plan. This wasn't the result of the greatest athlete Northeast Ohio has ever produced is gonna be my meal ticket too. Never thought of it that way.
Well, and I'm just interested to know, like, if so you've written about it, and obviously the Believe Land 30 for 30 and all the different things. Like, what's your relationship to that moment today, now that we're, X number of months beyond it and the Cavaliers are in another run? Like, for me, it still feels very fresh, and I had no idea what this whole experience was going to be like, month by month, the further we get away from it. But I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's still, its effect is still, very, very much real.
Well, and you're right, and that's the weird thing in trying to, especially the all of Game 7. I watched and rewatched, and I watched it a bunch, and was, I'd forgotten how badly the first half ended in Game 7. How if the Cavs had come out and JR hadn't hit like 8 points in a 2-minute span to bring them back into the game, that kind of thing. It'll probably never be played out, in terms of the feeling of it. I mean, it's hard right now with the Cavs, and that, that's without thinking about the brilliant 58 seconds of Andrew Bogut's Cavaliers career. But I'm saying, they're bored. I mean, a lot of NBA teams, especially veteran teams, recognize February, March. These aren't really important games for a team in the Cavs' position. That does not mean, they're trivial, but my effort has been somewhat like the Cavs' defensive effort. It's like I show up every game on League Pass and pretty much don't give it 100%. Like Myles Garrett, I take a lot of plays off. But part of being the defending champion, and which none of us is used to, rooting for the champs, is that, we still bring our mindset to it, not necessarily expecting the bad injury or the last minute loss, but certainly worrying obsessively that things are going to go south. We're still, the championship, to me, the flag really does fly forever. It was awesome at the moment, and it's awesome every day. And I think of it every day, but I don't watch, not watching the block every day. I'm watching, a team that thinks it can outshoot any team on the floor any night, and usually does, and isn't going to start worrying about getting serious, serious until it's time to get serious, when the playoffs start.
It's been one of the most interesting things about this season is Richard Jefferson and Channing Frye starting their podcast, and that's something that they talked about just this week when I think they were talking to Kent Bazemore from the Atlanta Hawks and how weird it is to have an opposing player on the podcast, and they were like, this season is so long, and we dap each other up and we talk and we do all this stuff during the season, but during the playoffs, man, we don't even talk. We won't look in each other's direction. We don't text. So even we kind of knew that, but it's nice to hear them say, like, hey, we treat everything completely and totally differently in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's not something I understood, for a long time. And I don't know, it's so weird because I've spent my whole life projecting all these emotions onto these guys.
Me too.
It's their job. Yeah, no, I mean, this is what kind of the richness and the weirdness and all that comes from. Otherwise, you're playing fantasy, you're gambling or whatever, but they really, it's not such an easy life. I know they're well paid and all that, but it is kind of, especially you get to RJ's age or whatever, it's like you're a smart guy, you've been in the league for all these years. You're away from home and family a lot of the time. You're with these guys. You're adjusting to this. The media, constantly has asks of you, and I don't think it's easy to play. To reach the level that they're at. I think it takes a lifetime of hard work and discipline to acquire that kind of mastery. And how are you going to stay interested in a game in Memphis? In January or February. How are you going to bring the same things to bear in terms of your intensity that you want to have for the playoffs? It makes perfect sense when I think about it from their point of view. And, people who are upset because, and including me, because they blow, they make a 25-point. They do the opposite of, instead of stepping on the throat of the prone opponent and crushing their windpipes, they offer them a hand up, metaphorically. 25-point lead. Let's see how it feels with a 4-point lead. Come on back. So it drives me crazy, but I totally get it from their perspective.
Well, and we had to learn this again when LeBron came back and the whole chill mode and everything else. And I just remember how upset and annoyed I was that, like, you mean you don't take every game seriously like it's your last and all this other stuff. Man. And in that same episode of the podcast, LeBron was talking and he talked about, what, he didn't say what makes him different, but he talked about being addicted to the process, and he loves that process of working out and dieting and doing all those things and just preparing all the time. And we've seen a number of players who were not addicted to the process, even Larry Sanders, Andrew Bynum, guys like that who, they were tall, so they got jobs and they weren't addicted to the process and they never became successful. And so you tend to, I don't know, I think I kind of take for granted some of these guys who do love the process.
It's hard, not everyone's version of embracing the process would be the same. Not all the outcomes would be the same. There's so many different variables. But I think across human endeavor, again, just regardless, the luck plays a huge. I mean, LeBron kind of encapsulated it, as many people have. But going into the finals last year, I think he said, you need three things: you need talent, you need health, and you need luck. And the hard work, of course, is implicit in anything that he's talking about. But across all of our work lives, we certainly apply ourselves to the process, whatever our process is, with differing degrees of diligence and consistency and the kind of thing, that makes a champion in any endeavor. And so there's lessons to be learned. I jokingly say, it's a trilogy, the LeBron trilogy. So if you don't like it, you're welcome, Cleveland. Just hang on for Locks, Love, and LeBron, a new guide, the perplexed. I'm not really writing a trilogy. I'm simply saying LeBron has taught me much. Maybe Fridays with LeBron will be the third one. But, it's funny because, guys like Bynum or Dion, guys that don't seem to have brought themselves to the same version of the process, they can be wildly successful, but it makes a difference. The application, I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of writing, more than anything else. You could use all the metaphors you want. It's just sitting there trying to type while you're thinking and then looking at, it's a grind. Anyone who's tried to do it, forget about the talent part, but anyone who's tried to do it knows it's not pleasant work. There's nothing heroic about it. There's nothing particularly interesting about it, unlike practice in a sport, which I've seen. It can be fascinating and the intensity bit. But you still got to sit there and do it and really come up with a structure process, whether it's, the way, the rituals, the rites. And people do develop those. You've got them at work. You just don't think about them. The order in which you do things and what makes you feel comfortable in your surroundings and the difference between how you bear down for a bigger piece of work rather than a smaller piece of work. And all that stuff, I guess, interviewing people over the years for Esquire, I was talking to people, even if I didn't love their work, they'd risen to the top of whatever. I always kept my ears open for lessons. I profiled Bill Murray after The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. And that movie took months and months to shoot in Italy and turn out, to be as wonderful as Wes Anderson intended it to be. And Bill Murray was saying it was a nightmare for him, in Italy. Anyway, I said, well, you must also have to work very hard. It was a complex movie. He goes, I worked the same hard on all of them. I really liked that. I didn't say, oh, come on, Garfield. I mean, because he was saying, I worked the same hard on all of them. You bring so if you've built, over the years through embracing whatever process, you've created for yourself, if you commit to that, consistently as you can over a long period of time, you don't turn into LeBron James, but you probably turn into a better version of yourself than Andrew Bynum turns into of himself.
Yeah. And you always think you think of writing, I think of running. Like, I am a runner.
Sure.
I have run a marathon, but no matter how much I work, I will never be, I'll never beat a Kenyan, in the Boston Marathon, but I could still find a way to be the best version of myself. And I mean, there are a lot of things that I think you find out at certain points growing up and through life, that the things that you're not going to be addicted to the process, you're not going to enjoy the process. And there's a lot you can learn from quitting something.
Go ahead, please.
No, I just I found out very early on, like, some things that I just wasn't going to enjoy the process of working through. Like, anytime I was talking about this recently, and this is way off the topic now, but I was talking about this recently with regard to Cub Scouts, because my kids are of that Cub Scout age. And I was like, well, yes, if you guys really want to do that, that's fine. But like, I couldn't get excited about the achievement that came with like merit badges and things of that nature. I just couldn't be motivated like that. I didn't feel like I was actually creating something. It was too temporary. And so I think I learned a lot from quitting it.
I think the important thing is there has to be some sense of passion is probably too strong a word. although it's easy if you're a dad or you're talking about things like art or sports, it's easy to talk in terms of passion. But yeah, I mean, if an activity, if an endeavor is repaying you with no meaning, if you're not connected to it in some meaningful way, it's going to be very tough to bring that whole self to bear on a day in, day out application. Yeah, it's trivial, and if I understand you're learning what you really value and what you really connect with by quitting, by walking away from something that you're not connecting with. Have I got that?
Yeah, right? And it's part of the self-assessment too. I don't know. It just feels like we have a number of these stories in sports where these guys they fit in a certain number of categories. They check the boxes in terms of physical characteristics, and then they wake up one day and they go, "Oh yeah, I don't like football."
Right. Well, I mean, we see that. I mean, it's totally. See, again, I'm still thinking and feeling, the lifetime of being a sports kind of fanatic. It's legit. It happens in chill mode. That's just a good example. And I still tease Brian Faith about how powerfully he reacted to chill mode, even before LeBron used the phrase chill mode. And I love that phrase. I think I have two different chapters. I think I have chill mode part 1 and chill mode part 2 in this book. We all have that chill mode. That we're not automatons. We're not farm animals. We're human beings. And you can't tell me, and I certainly could never tell you or anyone else, I don't have my version of chill mode. Yes, I'm out there. Yes, I'm giving it 100%, but my 100% today is basically 62% tops. Yeah. And the fact that these are world-class athletes and they're paid like movie stars, and movie stars too, it doesn't mean they're automata or farm animals. They're guys who maybe had a shitty time last night. I don't know.
Well, and that's something that I talked a lot about last year with my with some friends and my brother, because there was this well, what's wrong with Shumpert? And Shumpert, I expected this and that and the other thing, and I'm like, well, I don't know, and I don't want to speculate too hard, but he just had a kid. The people expect athletes not to be impacted by the real world and the same real life happenings. If you look at my productivity the first year of my oldest son, I was really distracted. I was unfocused. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing. It was a very confusing time in life, and we expect a guy like Iman Shumpert, because he's a talented basketball player, and I'm just using him as an example, but for him to be immune to that.
Yep. We project all of our emotions, strong emotions, if we're that kind of fan, onto these guys, the good and the bad emotions. I know that no one's paying to watch me write, but over the course of many years, someone's been paying me to write as well as I can every minute I'm writing. And that you try the same way for anyone. You try and please your boss, your customers, yourself, and all that. But it's so easy, and it's so much fun to just project it all. I love whenever someone anywhere uses that term forced narrative. It's what's wrong with Trump. And then you start thinking, it's all forced narrative. Kyrie said something last season, late in the season. It was I don't remember which playoff series, but the general theme was the redemption of JR. And, a gaggle of media, Kyrie, someone asked about, the redemption of JR. And Kyrie wasn't angry. Kyrie doesn't get angry, but, he was serious, Kyrie. And he said, you guys don't come home with us. You guys don't sleep with us. He's talking to the media. You guys don't know us, and you get this stuff attached, character flaws. I'm obviously heavily paraphrasing, but what he's saying is JR got tagged as being a knucklehead or whatever word you want to use early in his career, and you guys just beat that to death, and you just have no idea what you're talking about. And I think that's true. You don't know. any more than anyone else knows what really goes on, with you, your life, family, and work. It doesn't make it any less fun and interesting to say what's wrong with something than to have a lively debate, on the website or on the phone or in person. But that's what we do as fans. It's entirely separate from the lives they lead, and all narrative is forced unless you've got the player himself. It's fascinating that Frye and Jefferson have a podcast. Just more and more players tribune, more and more they're circumventing. They, being professional athletes, are circumventing the filter of the media, and I think generally for better for everyone except the media.
Well, it certainly changes the role. I mean, do you feel that? I mean, obviously, you at Esquire, you did the interviews and you did profiles and all kinds of things, and now with celebrities and athletes and everybody going kind of direct, I don't think it reduces the need for people to talk about those other people, but it kind of changes your role, or changes the role of the future, the future writers and profilers.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's certainly still a role, depending on the level of access and skill on the part of the media. There's certainly still a role for doing the kinds of things that Jason Lloyd, for example, was doing for the Beacon Journal, will be doing for the Athletic, where the guy who really does have insight and sources, but also his own eyeballs and his own opinions formed over the course of a career. There should always be room for that. Everyone still writes or puts together some kind of game story, but for most fans, most nights, they already know the game story. So what you're looking for is not just background, but people hate Tony Grossi. I understand, why people dislike him. Although Cleveland killed the messenger, and Cleveland is very strong. I don't think that Northeast Ohio has ever been well served in general by the media. I think the media should be much more like Tony Grossi. What Grossi brings to bear obviously isn't some knowledge of analytics, or in many cases that kind of here's what the locker room felt like insight. But he brings a long history, not just of studying the Browns organization intimately, but of paying attention to the rest of the NFL too. Doesn't mean he's right. Just means I want analysis. I want the kind of narrative that starts with a locker room scene that I didn't see, on Cavs.com or I didn't see just the press conference. I want to see more than that. And then I want to see some analysis on top of it. And I want it to be strong. I don't want the takes to be strong and stupid, like let's say Skip Bayless. But I want strong takes. I don't want Terry Pluto takes.
Well, and that was one of the interesting things about Jason Lloyd's Welcome to the Athletic post, and something that kind of grabbed my attention, and something that we've honestly been trying to figure out at Waiting for Next Year, in our little corner of the world for a long time, is just how do we write about every single game without just writing what happened, without, because the modern, the old school game recap is kind of dead. Like between box scores and highlight videos and online GIFs, everybody knows what happened, even if they didn't watch the actual game. And so we've always, not always, over the last 3-4 years, we've tried to figure out, how can we do it differently? And it seems like that's kind of the mission of the Athletic too.
I think that's what you have. You just have to figure out a way to add value. I'm going to pitch in at the Athletic. I'm going to write what I hope are not always global columns, but I really, it's the same question. How do you add value? You're trying to engage, and you've done a great job in general trying to engage. I always say readers because I'm a dinosaur, but can you still call them readers? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. You're trying to get them to engage, not just with your staff, the guys who are putting it out, and by guys that's alcohol genders. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
But with each other, you got a community going. That's kind of what you want. The monetization end of it, that adding value end, I think you need not just a brand, but it helps to have, like, Skip Bayless certainly doesn't get paid when he gets paid, because he brings great depth and insight or anything else. But he's notorious. You need a figurehead. I think that helps. That's really hard to find in any media market. But you need to somehow combine those things, and the gamer has the game story has nothing to do with it. But if you have the analytics guys and I think he was kind of the Browns guy. You know what I mean? You're always kind of weighing in with Browns analysis in a way that is it Bode or Bodie? I don't know how he pronounced it.
Yeah, Bodie.
Yeah, he doesn't. He comes from a much more I want to say granular point of view. And so you have to do all those things, but it helps that's why Skip Bayless goes from ESPN at X million dollars to Fox Sports at X million. They're not hiring Skip for any other reason than that it's like hairdressers when they change salons. They bring a following to the next salon. That's the business of it. I don't know. Nobody has anyone figured it out. Has anyone that you're aware of in the different families of websites? Has anyone found the right formula yet, subscription or ad based?
I don't think so, because the only thing that I think the only place where anybody's maybe figured it out is where a large profitable business kind of uses sports as just like a loss leader. I think more like when CNN switches their sports feed from Sports Illustrated to Bleacher Report, but even then they're using it's just. But no, not as like a standalone business. I'm just wondering if what The Athletic is doing, if it will do to the sports section what Craigslist did to the classified section if they're successful. And that's the unknown. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. If they prove a business model that lets them come in and cherry pick the most talented or the most followed or most engaging sports analysts in each market, are they the real death knell to the newspaper in town, even more so than the internet?
Well, the newspaper, what's left of the newspaper? I mean, I still go to Cleveland.com. I read Terry Pluto. I'll read columns. I'll read analysis in season. But I don't think of it as a newspaper anymore. I don't think a lot of people in Northeast Ohio do. I mean, we get, we live in the New York metropolitan area. We get the Times every morning, but only at my wife's insistence. She wants to read a newspaper in the morning, and instead of the Star Ledger, which is the Newark, New Jersey paper, this one is the New York Times. But I don't think that there's a newspaper left in Cleveland. I honestly don't. And so I think it's really much more, at least, for me, if you're going to look for the written word, it's, how does Waiting for Next Year, compete against The Athletic and vice versa. And I'm not sure when you talk about loss leader, like the Vertical, is that a loss leader? Wojnarowski's thing, the Vertical.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't really know.
I don't know how Bill Simmons is doing it. I mean, there's a brand name. There's a guy who maybe I don't think Grantland was ever. ESPN doesn't want loss leaders, especially now. But there was something that you would think you could sell subscriptions to. You could make a viable commercial endeavor out of presenting, writing at the level where Grantland is really acquiring, national talent and paying really well. But as far as I know, no one has done it on that scale except the guy in Pittsburgh. Isn't there an athletic type website in Pittsburgh?
There is. I always forget the name of it, but they've got, I think
Steelers.
I think they have 10,000 subscribers. So yeah, it's very successful.
But on a big scale, I I think the guys starting the Athletic are kind of trying to see if that model can work in different places and adapting to different markets. And I think these are open. Nobody knows what the answers to these questions are, but the death of newspapers, and the same with magazines. It's not that there won't still be hard copies of books, magazines, and newspapers, but the way things have changed over the course of my professional life, so radical, and so many people smarter than me, much more business experience and insight, still haven't been able to successfully monetize content, whether it's about sports or not sports. It's just really difficult to do. In an ad universe where better than me, it's very difficult to raise money on clicks.
Well, and it's dumb. When was the last time you knowingly or willingly clicked on an advertisement? I mean, if you don't have an ad blocker on, the chances of you actually clicking on an ad are so infinitesimal. It's most of the ad clicks today are accidental because you got tricked into it because we have fat fingers on our phones. Yes,
that's absolutely true. And my selfish takeaway conclusion is I'm glad, I'm at the end of my career. I'm glad I don't have to figure any of this out. Because again, in magazines, I saw guys I consider brilliant, just going, this content cannot be free. It's not sustainable. And I'm on the other end where I feel, and I'm old. I can't imagine how young people feel. Where I'm not going to. I love the Washington Post. Now more than ever, I want to support good traditional mainstream journalism. But no, I'm not going to subscribe online. No. I already pay for the Times.
But are you going to click on an ad?
I'm trying to think if I've ever clicked on an ad, and I don't think that I have ever clicked on an ad willingly.
Yeah, and how many people quit on a video watch with a pre-roll and everything else? The one place where advertising seems to be really doing well, and this speaks to Bill Simmons in The Ringer, is on the podcast. I know for a fact that they're making the biggest podcasts in the country are making tens of thousands of dollars per month, per week to have advertising on their podcast, whether it's MeUndies, or some clothing subscription company. So when are we going to start talking about the death of radio?
One thing occurs to me right now is maybe we should talk about sports.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, no. I'm just thinking, I'm kind of a befuddled writer who really, thank goodness, my timing has always been good. I don't think I get any extra credit for that, but once the emphasis on Esquire.com really kicked in, you would be asked to write instant obits, 700 words about Philip Seymour Hoffman. He just died. I always had a hard time just with that aspect of the change, is that, I really cared very much for his body of work. Only met him once and interviewed him, and, very, very interesting, sensitive guy. I don't think I can sit down at the keyboard and write 500 or 700 words about the guy passing. I'm shocked. I'm disheartened by it. I need to sit with that a while in order to write something. Back to your question, briefly though, the podcast is a different thing entirely because you're not asking anyone to read and click on anything. And as far as radio goes, my understanding of radio is that you've got AM radio, which is essentially an insane asylum. And then you've got whatever's left of FM radio, which I don't listen to. My son does. I have no idea what's going on with radio or who's making money or why.
Yeah.
I just know that podcasts are making tens of thousands of dollars a week because advertisers are supporting it. And we're talking about, people who have built franchise podcasts, whether it's Mark Maron or whoever else. And, for whatever reason, you're not asking people to make the effort to read and think in the same way. Plus, you have the engagement with the human voice, which is, with the exception of what you and I are doing this morning, usually pretty compelling.
All right. Well, let's finish up. Let's talk about how badly the Browns can screw up their draft then, because.
Well, you're the Mr. You know what? Yeah, maybe trading down. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe the trading down.
I figured you'd like that. Yeah. I'm not buying into Myles Garrett's hype. I'm afraid that he's not the guy.
But you see, I don't care who you're buying into. I don't care who I'm buying into. I don't care who anyone's buying into. Let's take a step back. Because one of the problems, and it's kind of the other end of the, hey guys, guess what? You're all dyed-in-the-wool Cleveland fanatics, and in terms of producing a book or 30 for 30, who cares? What do you think? You're actually not producing something for the Cleveland market. By the same token, let's take a step back and pay some attention to other NFL franchises. And I'm not just talking about the Steelers, Ravens, and Bengals because they're in the AFC North. Let's take a look at the 2-14 Kansas City Chiefs when they hired Andy Reid. Let's take a look at those that have floundered for much. I'm not saying I have some great conclusion here. I'm saying forget about the fact that you or I feel a certain way about Garrett, Allen, Watson, Kaiser, Kessler. Let's just take a step back and look at overall kind of how teams, wherever they draft, however high, however low, whatever their cap, they manage to find and develop, some cases build and rebuild competitive NFL teams. You could certainly, with the Browns, talk about the stability issue, and that's a huge issue. But if you step back and you realize each one of these organizations employs hundreds and hundreds of people, and that whatever winds up happening on draft day is the result of work on the ground by people whose names, even if we're Browns fanatics, we don't know. Whoever's making the final call, Ray Farmer, Sashi, George Kakine, everyone is operating, in the most rarefied competitive realm of this business. And while everyone basically is privy to the same information, these are organizational issues. These aren't whether you or I think Myles Garrett is the right thing. I'm just saying there's some obvious things we lose sight of. So one of the things that you really, at least for me, that you really have to look at is what's the hard thing to do here. Even if you're the Harvard Brain Trust, what's the difficult thing to do here? The difficult thing to do is to take a stand as an organization, make a decision, and live with the outcome. I know in many cases for Browns fans that means total lack of stability. But you have guys in their second season as a unit with the Browns and Berea who have the first overall pick, along with all the other picks. And, there is no risk, the only risk whatsoever to trading out of that first pick. Yeah, I mean, the only risk is you're going to piss off more fans. That's the only risk. The only risk is, and again, we can argue about Carson Wentz. The only risk of trading out of the Wentz pick is the Browns, as they are established, are an ATM machine. If you take a step back and look at teams who maintain stability and who succeed, they don't change. They don't change key personnel every year or two. So there's that issue. But we only can deal with what we have. I mean, this is partly, I think, in support of your argument for trading down. It's the right thing to do in your mind as an organization. So if you got nothing to lose, you're going to make money. That team makes money. That team's worth far more than it was when Jimmy Haslam bought it. And as I said in the column for The Athletic, when Pete Podesta watches Taylor Gabriel in the Super Bowl, he might not be happy about it, but he's not feeling all the feels that you and I and everyone else that we know is feeling, especially in light of Corey Coleman's rookie season. So they have nothing to lose whatsoever. It's the safest thing in the world for them to trade out of that pick, the same way they've kept her, which is part of the mix too, whether it's for Pete Podesta or not. The truth is, we have seen this year after year after year after year, and constant arguing amongst ourselves about the Trent Richardson trade and about, we won that trade. We got the Colts #1. Oh, look at us. Really? We won that trade? I think that trade was a wash at best. I'm saying I'll still defend Trent Richardson. I'll still call that a terrible fucking trade. I'm the Japanese soldier on the Philippines. My point is, this front office needs to step up, make a decision based on the best information available, and probably draft the best player available, because it looks like the best player available is that disruptor on the defensive line. I mean, this isn't hard. Chris Grant made it really hard. These guys are making it really hard. There's a degree of cowardice, corporate cowardice involved. Part of it's the instability because they want to keep their jobs. That's much more important to them than the one-loss record, is keeping their jobs. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. I'm not saying they don't care about success, but all that bullshit about the greatest fans in the world. Seriously, it's a joke. You have the first overall pick in the draft and a team that's 1-15 and has been accumulating draft picks since before some of our kids, were born. I mean, seriously.
No, and you're absolutely right about the team. Yeah. If Jimmy Haslam sold the team tomorrow, he would go down in NFL history as maybe the worst owner ever, just based on one loss record, and he would still cash in. He would still make money on the deal.
Right, and that's pretty much true in all major pro sports in America. If I'm in the Browns front office, it's every day's a good day to die. That's from Little Big Man, I think, which got it from somewhere else. It's a good day to die. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give it everything I've got. I do think this isn't that hard. If you identify, and everyone's already said it, if you identify whether it's Garoppolo, whoever it is, if you identify your quarterback, if it's Trubisky, draft him. But they have to make an organizational decision that involves a degree of courage that's the opposite of continuing to trade down, especially when you've got the first overall pick. If it turn out that Myles Garrett, whether it's injury, whatever it is, that I would much rather see that happen. It doesn't have to be Garrett. I'd rather see them identify the one key player coming out of the draft that they feel they must have, draft that player, and if it's not a quarterback, put together whatever package, it takes, whether it's the 12th pick or future pick, to bring in Garoppolo if you think he's the guy, or Cousins, or whoever. My point is, make the affirmed act like a winning organization, act like a confident organization, act like you trust the people that you are paid to make these decisions, not that we're going to assemble a collage of draft picks that are going to bring us glory, somewhere down the road. I don't, again, if you take a step back and you look at what that team has done, and you look at last year's draft, and by the way, when I was growing up, nobody anywhere would say, it really takes 3 or 4 seasons to determine whether that was a good draft or not. Nobody said that, because it's bullshit. It doesn't mean that every player's floor and ceiling after their rookie season. I don't mean that. But my God, either you drafted impact players or you haven't. And it doesn't take, a 14-2 season to see whether guys are making a difference on the field or not.
No, this is absolutely true. And I think a lot of Browns fans forget, we knew Kellen Winslow, even he got hurt real quick and everything else. We knew that kid had talent. Barkevious Mingo.
That's right. That's right.
We knew hopes for Barkevious Mingo were so misplaced. He had physical ability, but he was not a really good football player. And you could tell from the minute he stepped on the field.
Our job is to endlessly debate who would you have taken instead, which for some people is a lot of fun. My job over the years.
How about Julio Jones? Can we take him instead?
Well, but there are guys. I mean, our faith, our whole fanhood is based on relying on decisions by guys who do this for a living every day. You know what I mean. It doesn't matter who I think they should have drafted instead. What matters is that the people who are running that show are not competitive. I'm not saying they're not trying, but they're not as good. It's not a crapshoot. I mean, there's always luck involved, and the NFL draft is absolutely ruled by chance in a lot of cases. So all the more reason, if you've got the number one, to act with confidence in your own judgment. That's what you're getting paid to do. I know that there are arguments, coaching arguments to be made in any given draft for any given number of moves. But it would really, to me, come off as a disgrace for this organization to punt the first pick overall. After, if there can be a bad 1-15, because they're all bad if you're 1-15. The Browns did not improve as the season went on. The Browns did not show signs, either as a coaching staff or as a football team, of coming together. The season was really rough and the record is hideous, but we know that we're built. No, that's all bullshit. That's all talk. It's like them coming out and saying, we have the right people in the right places now, and then dumping half the coaching staff. So I don't want to sing straight down.
Yeah. All right. I totally understand the perspective. I'm with you that I keep saying that I want them to win the poker hand. And that's the confidence thing I think that you're talking about too. Just do something confidently.
They have the first overall pick. They have 5 picks in the first 65 players. If they can't find 3 actual impact players, the impact this season, I'm not talking about records. I'm talking about if they can't find 3 guys in the first 65 picks that come in and that we can't say, you know what, that's an NFL player, I would fire him too.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get to the Indians, but someday we will. Our conversations are very long and they're fun. I love them. They kind of go from place to place to place. Although you don't think we did a good job.
I'm worried that it's so interesting to us, the media thing. It's such a fascinating thing to us, but I'm not sure. That's not because that's kind of where we put a lot of our time and energy. I'm not sure that the business of the media. I think people are. It's like with athletes too. People are perfectly happy, just kind of piss on Mary Kay or Windhorst or Grossi or whoever, and they'd rather not hear about how we do our laundry. We can do another podcast if you want. It's all sports. I'll keep pimping the book.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to do that because I definitely want to talk about the Indians and the World Series a little bit. And
they lost. Spoiler alert: they lost. They lost. Rajai hit a home run, and something else happened, and then it was over.
The fucking Cubs, man.
And I know how lame this sounds, but if it had to go down, I'm relatively okay with the opposition being a team that hadn't won for 108 years. I guess, I like the city. I don't like the fans. I don't like any fans, including Cleveland fans. They are who they are, and they waited a long time, and it made a lot of it made a lot of good people happy. So
once you're removing your Cleveland fandom and you're looking outside yourself, it is an undeniably good story. Just like the Cavaliers is an undeniably good story.
Yeah, and people say, I'm sure you've heard versions of this, is how would that World Series have felt if the Cavs had come back and won a championship? Just it would have been so. It was devastating. And I keep saying if they'd have lost 6-2 in Game 7, it's awful and it's sad. But Jesus, the Cubs had a great team and all that momentum. But to come back, tie it up, and losing in extras at home.
After a rain delay.
It hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. But we should leave people. If there's anyone still listening, we should leave them alone at this point.
And if there is anybody still listening, the book is You're Welcome, Cleveland: How I Helped LeBron James Win a Championship and Save the City by Scott Raab.
Not a serious title, by the way. I've already had people acting like, what a pretentious asshole. It's not a serious title. Okay. Neither was the Whore of Akron, by the way. But no one ever bought that. It was a joke to me, at least. But because I'm making money off this guy while I'm calling him a whore. But You're Welcome, Cleveland. Yeah, I really helped. I did anything, nothing. So just to make that clear. But enjoy. It's a funny book. So enjoy the book.
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying it so far, and thanks so much for coming on, and we'll do it again sometime, and we'll certainly keep a lookout for all the stuff you're doing at the Athletics. So thanks so much for coming, man.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Until next time, everybody, it's been the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast.